Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Hi there. So, like this morning, we're going to ask you to raise your hand if you have a question so we can get you the microphone so we make sure we have the benefit of all of your wonderful questions on the video recording. Mr. David Sneed started working with us a few years ago with our summer fellowship when he was the VP of Marketing for the New York Philharmonic. He's now the CEO of the Handel and Haydn Society in Boston. He's had a tremendous career in arts management. This is a really terrific presentation, so I'm going to pass it off to him.
Oh, thank you, Matthew. I have to apologize. I'm getting over a pretty bad cold, so you get the Lauren Bacall version of my voice today. How many here are really from Texas? Okay, good. I haven't been hearing many accents. So anybody know where Robert Lee, Texas is? Okay, anybody know San Angelo? Yeah, sure. Okay, good. My family's from Robert Lee, which is just north of San Angelo. So nice to see you. Unfortunately, I missed Brett's presentation this morning, but I've seen it a number of times, and there's some things that he talks about that really resonate with me that I wanted to start off by reinforcing. And I think one of the things that, Brett, you probably talked about, right, was this: no money or time to waste. Did you talk about that? Yep. Yes, he did. All right. That's so important. And what I'm going to talk about today is actually a way, I think, of really fine-tuning and optimizing your marketing strategy for the audience that you're trying to reach, because we really can't afford to get it wrong. And I'm a big proponent of shooting before, so I encourage you to do the work, learn about your audience, listen to what they have to say about you, and use that to guide what you do. The key kind of idea that this presentation is about is this word here, relevance. It's all about that. It starts and ends with that. What I'm going to be advocating for you to do is to learn how to matter more to your audience and to the inclined non-attenders that Brett talks about. And you do that by listening and learning. There's no substitute for it. It's like any relationship. If you want to be relevant and want to matter to someone, you start off by learning about them. And that's what this is about. Another thing that Brett talks about is measurement and constant learning. So important. Marketing is all about learning. Anytime you send out a postcard or an email blast or anything else, it's an opportunity to learn. Test, test, test. Always be testing. Remember Glenn Carey, Glenn Ross, always be closing, always be testing. Send half your list one version, send half your list another, and see what happens. Learn an offer that you need to do, or a 20% offer you need to do, or everything that you need to know about doing marketing, you can learn from your audience. So very, very important. Testing and tracking all the time, everything that you do. We are absolutely in the experience business, and when I think about that, there's a dead spot here where the mic goes off, right? I think about that. I really think about the implications of that for the definition of quality. If we're in the experience business, what does that mean about our definition of quality? Is quality that we played all the notes at the right time, in the right order, we came at the right point, and we stopped when we should have? Or is quality about the experience? I think if we're in the experience business, obviously our definition of quality is about the quality of the experience, and that's what we should be measuring and learning about. I think Brett talked about duty. So important. At the H&H, we have 20 full-time staff. Everybody goes to every concert. It's really, really wonderful. They talk to customers. They talk to board members and donors. They experience the product. It helps all of us do our jobs better. It really creates the collaboration that's so important to what we do. One thing, if you do nothing else today, this phrase home, surprise and delight, because it is magic. And I think you might have talked about this, Brett. We at the Philharmonic, we tested it. So first of all, we measured the effectiveness. We took a sample of our first-time single-ticket buyers, first-year subscribers. We went up to them, said at the concert, "Hi, I'm David Sneed. I'm VP of Marketing for the New York Philharmonic. Thank you so much for coming. I understand you're a new subscriber this year. How's it going? How do you like your seats? We're so happy to have you here. Here's my card. Here's a CD with our compliments, and please enjoy the season." And that's it. And we tested the retention rates of the people that we hit with surprise and delight versus our other first-year subscribers that we did not. The difference in retention simply from doing that was 70% higher for people that we just thanked for coming. Nothing else. Then we decided to scale that up and because we have hundreds of people coming every night. How do you reach all these new people? Now we do it where when the usher is scanning the ticket, it's programmed for certain people to be hit with surprise and delight. The buzzer goes off. The guy says, "Oh, you won. There's Mr. Sneed from the Philharmonic who'd like to talk to you." So in this way, we were able to reach everybody we needed to reach throughout the year, and that alone increased retention substantially. And if you can keep more first-time subscribers to become second-year subscribers, then they become habitual subscribers, they become donors, and all kinds of good things happen. So show duty, surprise and delight, very important. Another thing Brett talks about is that marketers need to go deep. And I believe this so passionately. As a marketer, you really, really have to know the product. People ask me, looking for a marketing director, do they really have to know classical music? Well, they don't have to know classical music per se, but they've got to have a passion for it. And they have to have a curiosity about it. And when you hand them a program for a season, they've got to be able to look at it and understand what it is they need to know to communicate it. As you said, Brett, what is special and unique about this program, about this classical, about this arts offering, whatever it may be. I went to work for the Guthrie Theater. I didn't know anything about theater, but I delved in to learn about the works that we're doing. I had dinner parties, brought people over to read the plays, all of that. And you can't start if you don't yourself have that passion and know why we're doing what we're doing. But fundamentally, I think what I'm talking about in this presentation is going from taking what Brett talks about and adding this other component, which is the customer knowledge part, which you'll use to guide your marketing. But I also think it's organizational, it's strategic, and it's not just the marketing department. It's about who you are, why you're here, it's your existential reasons. And it's about kind of how you think about your organization. What I'm talking about is going from this kind of traditional hierarchical structure of an organization to something like this, where the patron's at the middle and the artistic team, the marketing team, the development team, the education team are all collaborating on how they add value to the customer's experience with us. And that's my thinking, that's how you grow. So this is to show that a little more impactfully, this video. So what I like about that is this phrase here. The first thing we ask is, what do we want people to feel? And then we craft our intention. So if you think about designing an arts experience, if we're in the experience business, if we started with, what do you want the customer to walk away with at the end of the night? What do we want them to experience? What do we want them to feel? And if we thought 360 degrees about how we deliver that, from the programming, to every step in the customer journey, what impact that would have and how it might change what we do. By the way, I wanted to also mention, Matthew talked about me working with DeVos for a few years. I've worked with, over my career, 11 different arts organizations, believe it or not, with budgets from 110,000 to literally 110 million. And what I'm talking about today is something that has worked at every single budget level. So it's not about what it's about, can you afford to not do research? So we're going to talk today about using customer insights as a driver of not just marketing, but organizational strategy, how you acquire it, how you apply it 360 degrees to marketing, programming, and fundraising. And really, it's about how you build an effective brand meeting for your organization. What I mean by effective is one that really moves the dial, that fills the sails, and sets you off in a direction for growth that you can measure as being effective. Not just that people know about you, but what they know about you is motivational. It gets them to come to see you and experience you and support you. There's one piece of kind of academia theory I want to show to you today, and it's this Rubicam brand asset valuator, which I think a few people has. Y&R started doing this in the early 90s. They measured the attributes of over tens of thousands of brands internationally over a period of time to see what it is about brand meeting that actually moves the dial and getting, in this case, for profits. So there's 4 dimensions of brand they found: esteem, knowledge, differentiation, and relevance. Esteem, knowledge, differentiation, relevance. For that, we're going to come back to it. And esteem is how well thought are you? Do people perceive that you deliver on your brand promise? Do you play all the right notes at the right time? Are you good? Knowledge is how much do they know about you? Are they aware of you? Do they know you exist? And they found out that knowledge actually has 2 components to it. If people know too much about you, it turns into boredom. It's like the Golden Gate Bridge. People stop thinking about it. So do people know that you exist? And how well do they know you? And if they know you too much, have they become bored with you? Differentiation, obviously, is do you stand apart? Do people get something from you they can't get anywhere? And relevance is, do you matter to them? And I don't mean do you matter to the community. You do good things in the world, which is very important. This is about, do you matter to people at sort of deep, reptilian, subconscious level? Do they love you? When they hear the name, Austin Opera, what comes to mind? Is it a sense of love? What do they think? That's relevance. So what they found in studying tens of thousands of brands over a couple of decades now is that these 2, esteem and knowledge, are actually not associated with growth of a brand. So organizations that spend all their time talking about how good they are not experiencing talk about how much they matter. So organizations that work on relevance and differentiation are the ones that tend to grow. As Y&R said, brands that grow 50% higher operating margin. Relevance is the key to market penetration, and brands that work on both have the greatest increase in operating earnings. So how do you stand apart and how do you matter? And those 2 work together, as we'll see later on. This is interesting to me. David Ocker, anyone written many, many books on branding. As a chairman emeritus at UC Berkeley. He's a marketing guy, and he studied what actually gets people to buy stuff over decades, and he says it's astounding how much of what is spent on marketing has no impact on growth. So we're not talking about you spending more money on marketing. What grows market share is relevance. So matter more to your market, and that is how you'll grow. Through a number of different ways. As I said, it starts with learning about them. So here's another example.
She was a good companion, eyes like the Grand Canyon. She was an American beauty.
What's that?
She was a long goodbye. She was the best I could buy. She was an American beauty. With her wafers on in the summer sun, her touch felt like a loaded gun. Wish I had held her long. Wish I had held her long.
So what is their relevance strategy? How have they decided they're going to be relevant to their market? What are they selling here?
Selling family.
Family, connection. The song says, I wish I'd held her longer, right? What do they want the dad to be thinking when he's at Dick's Sporting Goods and thinking about a Christmas present for his daughter? It's about the connection, right? They're selling a lifelong relationship, which you all want with your child. Get it by buying that friggin' basketball hoop. This is another brand. Their mission is to bring inspiration and innovation to every athlete in the world. If you have a body, you're an athlete. Who is that? Come on, you all know it. Who is it? Nike. But Nike sells shoes, right? No, what they sell is inspiration and innovation. And here's how they communicate that. Blew it. Okay. This should start now. There we go.
Greatness, it's just something we made up. Somehow we've come to believe that greatness is a gift reserved for a chosen few, for prodigies, for superstars. And the rest of us can only stand by watching. You can forget that. Greatness is not some rare DNA strand. It's not some precious thing. Greatness is no more unique to us than breathing. We're all capable of it. All of us.
Okay, so what they're selling, obviously, by buying that pair of Nike shoes. You're all probably familiar with the Dove Real Beauty campaign. Have you seen the Sketches video before? All right, well, do you mind watching it again? 69 million views, redefining the meaning of soap.
I'm a forensic artist. Worked for the San Jose Police Department from 1995 to 2011.
I showed up to a place I'd never been, and there was a guy with a drafting board.
We couldn't see them, they couldn't see us.
Tell me about your hair.
I didn't know what he was doing, but then I could tell after several questions that he was drawing me.
Tell me about your chin.
It kind of protrudes a little bit, especially when I smile.
Your jaw.
My mom told me I had a big jaw.
What would be your most prominent feature?
I kind of have a fat, rounder face.
The older I've gotten, the more freckles I've gotten.
I would say I have a pretty big forehead.
Once I get a sketch, I say thank you very much, and then they leave. I don't see them.
All I had been told before the sketch was to get friendly with this other woman, Chloe.
Today I'm gonna ask you some questions about a person you met earlier, and I'm gonna ask you some general questions about their face.
She was thin, so you could see her cheekbones. And her chin, it was a nice, thin chin.
She had nice eyes. They lit up when she spoke.
Cute nose.
She had blue eyes, very nice blue eyes.
So here we are. This is the sketch that you helped me create, and that's a sketch that somebody described of you.
So yeah, that's...
She looks closed off and fatter, sadder too. The second one looks more open, friendly, and happy.
I should be more grateful of my natural beauty. It impacts the choices and the friends that we make, the jobs we apply for, how we treat our children. It impacts everything. It couldn't be more critical to your happiness.
Do you think you're more beautiful than you say?
Yeah. Yeah.
We spend a lot of time as women analyzing and trying to fix the things that aren't quite right. And we should spend more time appreciating the things that we do like.
if you think about Dove and that brand back in the 50s, I remember, was they were all about 1/3 moisturizing creams. All they talked about was. And it was all about the functional attribute of the soap. And now it's so different. It means something so different to people. And it's all about just creating a deeper, more relevant meaning for your target market. So you stand for something more than just the functional part of soap, beyond that. So how does this apply to the arts? We're going to get to that in a minute. I think this is a very interesting quote from the friggin' publisher of Forbes magazine, who says, purpose-driven organizations have a huge competitive advantage. Employees and customers are hungry for purpose. So Dove is positioning themselves as being purpose-driven about women's self-image issues and all of that. And we, in the performing arts, we are purpose-driven. We have a purpose. We don't talk about it as much, at least when we're trying to market. And I think that what we're seeing here is that there is a strategic opportunity for us to sell a deeper meaning than what we quite often talk about. It's not just Beethoven, it's what this experience does to your life. So how you get there, as I said before, is starting by listening. And Peter Drucker, the famous guru, said the aim of marketing is to understand the customer so well that the product or service fits him or her and sells itself. So the very first thing in that sentence, the definition of marketing, is understand the customer. And you can't go any further in developing your marketing strategy or brand strategy without that customer knowledge. It kind of astonishes me what many people in the arts actually don't know about their audiences. They don't actually know who goes, why they go, what they thought of it, what happened to the people who left, how do you get the people who are coming to come more often, how do you communicate with them, and fundamentally how you grow. I think that if you do not know the answers to these questions, it's impossible to do good, strategic, efficient marketing. Get back to the point at the beginning of this about you can't afford to waste money. To try to market an organization without knowing the answers to these questions, to me, is just tantamount to marketing malpractice. So really take the time to know the answers to these questions, and then you start talking about how you're going to market your organization. And it actually is about knowing and not assuming. As Will Rogers said, it's not what you don't know that'll get you, it's what you think you know that just ain't so. And so often we are a prisoner of our assumptions. We know what's going to work and what isn't going to work, and you have these vicious debates at board meetings and staff meetings about which direction to go. And actually, you can find the answer by simply talking to the customers and learning from them. This is kind of your research agenda, what I think you need to do on every couple of year basis to your current audience. What they attend, why they attend, how often they attend, their perceptions of you, how you communicate with them, what media they use, what else they do. It's very important to understand the competitive landscape, and also what other organizations your folks go to, because you can then trade lists with them and use that to grow audience. Satisfaction with the experience. How can we improve and grow if we don't know actually what people think of us on stage and off, what they want to see in terms of programming? Not that that will drive what you do, but it will inform what you do. It'll help you understand the implications of programming choices and design programs that really fit that experiential need. And lastly, where you can get better. Ask your customers that question. So that's something you should do routinely. And then for subscribers, more specifically why they subscribed, you should test the value of the benefits you offer subscribers, understand which ones matter more than others. And so you stop talking about the tchotchkes and the free coffee mugs and more about the experience and enhancing the experience for subscribers and their satisfaction with subscribing. Single ticket buyers, why they bought that concert, how you get them to come back. Test ideas about getting them to come more often. Is it a discount? Is it programming? What will really move the dial? You can learn all of this just by asking them. And these days, with online tools like SurveyMonkey, it's very, very easy to do. I think one level, this is about getting a really, really good partner to work with you in designing some pretty intense research. Another level, it's just giving people avenues to communicate with you. It could be as simple as asking people after a concert in the lobby what they thought, making sure you don't go to the same people every time. You could send an email out to your audience and ask them, hey, we want to develop some dialogue with some of our customers. Would you be willing to sign up just to take surveys, questionnaires from us now and then, and just create your own online panel. People do that. Now that's not actually, replicable to the larger group. It's a very self-qualified study group, but it's an avenue, it's a channel. And if you as an organization just get in the habit of every time a question comes up saying, gee, maybe we should get some input from the customers on that. That's kind of the philosophy that I'm thinking about. Lapse attenders, very, very important to stay in touch with them, understand why they left you and what will get them to return. Was it a price thing? Was it a programming thing? Is it the economy? Is it that they moved? Test some various ways of getting them back, again, in a questionnaire. You can also test really and just measure what happens. Again, it's going to help you a lot if you want to get those folks back to understand why they left. Same thing about donors. You should be surveying your donors, talking to them about their motivations for giving, what they think of you, how they like the benefits, what else they give to, and test some different ways of how they could grow their relationship with you. Also, potential new donors. People who have been going for a few years but aren't donors yet. Why is that? Do they give to other places? Wealth ratings can be very, very helpful. Identifying people in that group who could be useful to you in the future, and then survey those people. How you do all this, we talked about surveys already. You can do it through online surveys. Also, you can just bring people into a room and do focus groups. Now, the problem with focus groups is, I'm sure many of you know, they're not really replicable to the broader population. You can also get a couple of people in a room who tend to drive the conversation. So we don't do them much at all anymore. What I tend to do with my research consultants is do in-depth interviews, get a selection of people who represent the population you want to talk about, and then just do 1 hour in-depth interviews with them, learn all you can about them. Smaller group, but the idea is to develop some hypotheses you can then test in the quantitative surveys. You can also just do intercepts in the lobby at the concerts. It's another way to do it. You can also use your database, a very, very important, just a very, very simple, what did people do over the past few years? What concerts did they go to? How frequently? What do we know about donors versus non-donors? That can be, if you have the information, it's very, very simple to learn from that. And then again, test. I think Brett talked about non-attenders, inclined non-attenders, very, very important group if you want to grow. What you want to know about that group is how many are there out there? What do they think of you right now? Do they think of you at all? Where in that esteem, knowledge, differentiation, relevance thing, where do they stand with you? What else do they do? You can segment these groups a couple of different ways. Behaviorally is just simply looking at what they do, which I think for most smaller organizations is the simplest way to do it. Just segment people based on light attender, heavy, medium, light, heavy attender, medium attender, light attender, and then learn about those people in each of those segments. It's kind of the simple, basic thing to do. Yes, ma'am. Microphone somewhere. Wait for the mic. Yeah, sure, yeah.
Hi, I'm Mickey Jacobs, and I'm wondering about the surveying anonymous versus asking people for names.
It should be anonymous, yeah.
So when you're surveying, go anonymous.
Right.
And then if you want names or specific input, then that would be the in-depth interviews or anecdotes.
Well, even that can be kept confidential. I think typically you want all that to be kept confidential.
Right, but I mean, you would know as the organization.
Yeah, right.
But in terms of surveying, go anonymous.
Yeah, the one thing is, oftentimes to get response rates up, you'll want to offer some kind of incentive with your survey, in which case you'll have to know who it was that responded. So there's a technique for just kind of getting people to respond by filling out a form. Yes, sign me up for the 2 free tickets, but then that's never shared with anyone. Behavioral, we just talked about, heavy, medium, light. Psychographic is digging under the surface and understanding who these people are and what motivates their attendance at the arts or to your organization, and using that information to develop strategies. Look at both examples in this study, and I think, like I said, for most small organizations, just starting with the heavy, medium, light is the easy way to go. What you're looking for with these inclined non-attenders is how you become more relevant to them, where you take the brand, how you deal with the experience, and how you grow. Now, how you find out about the inclined non-attender because they're not in your database is something called a market study, which I'm going to show a couple of examples of, and many people don't do. And for small organizations, it might be something where you consider collaboration. You might get together with the 5 or 6 of your fellows and agree to do a study of the theater audience in Austin. And you'll learn about that, and there'll be some proprietary information you'll keep to yourself, but in general, you all will learn about how big that group is, what the segments are, et cetera, if you can't afford to do one on your own. But I've done them for pro bono. You know, it's possible to get these things donated. You can get the board to raise the funds for it. You can apply for a grant. But what is a market study? A market study is a study of the market. So this is primarily people who are not going. And so you identify through a screener, meaning you send someone an initial questionnaire about their interest in your art form. Let's say it's classical music. You're on a scale of 1 to 5, how much do you like classical music? If they're 4 or 5, then you ask one more question, which is, how often do you go to stuff? Because what you want is people who are really into what you do and they are active culture goers. If someone's into what you do but they're not going to anything, then they're probably not in your market. They may be physically infirm or not be able to afford it or some other reason. So you qualify people for interest in your art form and then going to at least one cultural event a year. And then once they say yes to that, then you send them a survey, learn about who they are and their attitudes towards you and the competition and all the other stuff. Yeah, awareness, arts attendance, brand perceptions, programming, and how you fit into their lives. So, before I get into some other examples, there's these 2 key concepts I want to make sure you're clear on. One is the concept of positioning. This is the differentiation and relevance part of your strategy. So positioning a brand defines the brand in this way. You combine the functional attribute, what you do. You do classical music, you play concerts, you give theater performances, you're an art gallery or whatever, with the consumer end benefit, meaning why that matters. So it's a combination of functional attribute, what you do, with the consumer end benefit, why that matters, so that it's motivational. And we'll show you several examples of that. This other theory concept is segmentation. We talked about that a bunch already, defining people into discrete groups that hang together as a group but are different from other groups. Demographics is one. By the way, in this presentation, you'll see I spend very little time talking about demographics. To me, in my field of work, classical music, demographics just aren't that important. They're not that differentiating. I don't go after people based on age or income or education. I go after people based on their relationship to the art. So my whole thing is find people who want what I do and then talk to them. And don't worry about, demographics. Yes. What? Microphone?
And from Conspiratory, we have this question all the time about kind of what I call genuine interest and connection, because we need younger audience, we need this demographic, et cetera. So how have you helped your organization come to that place with you of we want people who connect with the art form?
Well, I think in the examples I show, hopefully I'll answer that question, but if it's still, basically, we start off by saying, here's people I'll show you 4 examples, Pittsburgh, New York, Minneapolis, and Boston, who like what we do and aren't coming. We're going to spend our time learning about them and forget about everything else, because defining people based on general broad demographic, it's just too cutting, it's too broad. It's not finite enough a grouping to really be useful. Because in any age group, most of them just aren't that into classical music. It's just any demographic, most of them are just not our market. So, I mean, of course, eventually we want to turn everyone to love us. But let's start with the people who already like what we do and aren't coming, and then build from there. So I guess there's another question somewhere someone had, I thought. Okay. So I want to show you a couple of examples of this from the frozen food world. It's a great place to see these concepts at work. We're going to look at 3 different kinds of frozen food. The first one is Stouffer's. Stouffer's is known for quality in frozen food, if that makes any sense. But it's right there on the cover. Herb seasoned chicken breast strips with fire roasted chilies, red pepper, and Monterey Jack and cheddar cheeses with rice and a corn medley. So Stouffer's is all about taste and quality. Compare that with this one, Healthy Choice. There's the runner up there on top, so it is about health. And right there on the cover is the nutritional content. So Healthy Choice is if you want healthy frozen food. Compare that one with this one, Hungry Man. I don't care about taste. I don't care about nutrition. I want a pound of food. So it's all chicken. It's 3 different ways of selling chicken to different markets. And compare that to the arts. Here's 3 examples of ballet brochures. Let's look at the strategy. So here's one. This is ABT, American Ballet Theater. There's one woman off by herself on point, you know, sort of lost in her own world, subscribe now, casting announced. So this seems to be for the aficionado, right? The person who's into the purity of the experience and actually cares about the cast. Compare that one with this one, New York City Ballet. Now you've got 2 people. One of them is looking at us. What is this one? What are they selling here? Sex, romance, pardon me? Story. So it's a very different kind of play than this one, which is about kind of the elegance and I don't want to say dispassionate, but an experience that's less kind of emotional, more about the pure dance. This is about kind of the connection, romance, sex, etc. Compare that to this one, which is Pittsburgh, and this one really is much more kind of about the physicality of dance, which is, you know, all of these are legitimate, actual, you know, ways of promoting dance. They all say different things. They're all communicating a different benefit, and I don't know for sure, you know, whether or not these companies actually thought about that when they did the brochure, but you have to think about that when you're creating your communications. What are you saying? What consumer end benefit are you promoting? And, you know, all that is ways of trying to connect and create relevance, as opposed to this, which is we took out all of the area codes and everything else. You couldn't tell it was a Philadelphia orchestra. But this is, you know, I don't know anything about you. Make a pot of coffee, sit down, spend the evening trying to find something you want. And, you know, what you want is something where someone sees it and they go, ah, this is for me. So now I want to show you 4 examples of this kind of thinking in the arts. Time-wise, we're fine. Pittsburgh Symphony. Started off with a market study. All these are going to be market studies. We wanted to find out the size of the classical music audience in Pittsburgh. We found that 94% of the people in the Pittsburgh market just aren't that into us. You know, Sex and the City, just not that into me. So, but the good news is that 6% actually are really into what we do, and they go to cultural events. We had 1%. So this is the opportunity for growth right here. Who are these people? What do they think about us? How do we get them to come? Are we going to not worry about these people? No, I mean, we do want to eventually, again, convert everybody, but at least short term, let's start here as the first order of business. So looking at that sliver, the 6%, this is a psychographic presentation, psychographic segmentation. Classical elite were people who are really into classical music, that's why they go. Heavy arts are people into broader arts experiences. This group here, Kids First, was families with kids. Crazy Lives was single people, younger, very workaholics, very busy. These people here were just basically all talk, no action. They said they're into it, but then we actually scratch underneath the surface, not really. How did you get that additional layer of help? That was a result of a survey that was sent to them once they qualified for classical music interest and going to cultural events. Now, this is an older example. Back then, it was actually done via the mail in the 90s before electricity was invented. And so now it'll all be done online. This is the PSO audience. Large bulk is the classical elite, which makes sense. Heavy arts down here, the 2 of them are about 50%. Then you got the other 3 segments here. The interesting thing to us was you look at these 2 pie charts, there's one group that's really way underrepresented in our audience. That's a huge proportion of the potential audience, and that's the Kids First. So this told us that if we want to really be serious about growing the audience for the Pittsburgh Symphony in Pittsburgh, we have to deal with the issue of families and kids. Help people with kids get to the concerts and get to the Pittsburgh Symphony. So we had a room in the basement of Heinz Hall, a former coat check that was being unused. And we had anyone here from Pittsburgh? There's a supermarket there called Giant Eagle, and they have in their grocery stores actually daycare centers. They're called Eagle's Nests. So we went to the Eagle's Nest people and said, would you like to start an Eagle's Nest in Heinz Hall? And so we could have, have people bring their kids to the concerts and go down there and pick them up afterwards. We also started doing more family concerts. But the strategy really was about how do you help people with kids come to the concerts. Unfortunately, New York Philharmonic called in, so I don't know what happened with it. But so this is the single ticket ad before the work was done. Our consumer end benefit we learned was about escape. Oh, by the way, before going there, remember esteem, knowledge, differentiation, relevance. Here's the single ticket ad. It is one of the orchestras in the world most worth hearing. So what strategy is that? Esteem, knowledge, exactly right, which we now know is not associated with growth. What's associated with growth is relevance. So after doing the work and learning how to become more relevant to the audiences, the single ticket ads became this: joy, romance, inspiration, passion, energy, and enlightenment, or do you get enough of that at the office? A board member said it was like a sexual harassment suit he'd been in. But anyway, music is like dessert. It's so much sweeter when it's freshly made, and it's like listening to a great movie soundtrack without the bad film to distract you. So this is all about establishing relevance beyond just nuts and bolts of playing Beethoven. And single ticket sales with this campaign were up 27% over the prior year. So that's a very brief look at Pittsburgh. The same thing now with the New York Philharmonic. This was actually a logo project. I had just gotten the call to come work with New York, and they sent me a fax one day. Remember faxes? And it was their new logo. Hey, Dave, what do you think of the new logo? And I said, well, I don't care what I think of it. What do you want to say? What do you want to represent? And this was the logo before the work was done, and they decided to pause and actually talk to customers and use that to help determine the brand strategy. So this was the cover of the brochure before the work was done. He's perfected the finest instrument in the world. Thank you, Kurt Mazur. What's missing from this conversation? The customer, right? It's like this is us thanking him back and forth, but there's nothing about relevance to the audience. So that's the brochure at the time. This is our main competition, Carnegie Hall. This is really an exploration of those ideas of differentiation, relevance, working together, differentiating through relevance. So we did the market study. Once again, most of the market's just not that into us. In New York, it's about 7%. Looked at those people, and we had these segments here. Cultural, sort of like the cultural folks in heavy arts in Pittsburgh. By the way, this is a segmentation done on people's uses of the arts, why you go to arts events. Because we learned that in New York City, the audience is extremely active. They go to a whole bunch of different kinds of things, much more than in other markets. We decided our competition is not really going to be primarily other classical music stuff. Our competition is other arts in general, theater, museums, et cetera. So how do we fit into that ecosystem, that landscape? That's our competitive set. So culturals are people who are really into cultural events as just sort of general entertainment. Mike, yes, your question?
Just the slide before, how did you survey that sliver of people? How did you get the contact information?
Right, so that was an email to a broad group of people. Very good question. I didn't actually answer that before. Working with a survey research company who had a panel of people they had recruited in New York that they paid to take surveys. These exist all over the country. There's one in Austin. They're all over the place. And you work with a research consultant who will pay something to have access to that panel. You send that panel the two questions I asked about, which was interest in the art form and attending cultural events. The people who say yes to that, you then send the very in-depth, long survey that helps define the segments. So that way you're representing the entire marketplace. So that's how it was done. Thank you for that question. Okay, 5 segments. Culturals are people who, for them, just going to the arts is kind of what they do. It's their form of entertainment. Socials are people who use the arts as an occasion to get together with family and friends. So it's all about calling people up and, hey, let's get together on Friday night and go see a show. Intellectuals have no friends. They are the overeducated, underpaid college professor types. And then this is Busy in the Burbs is like the soccer moms and the Pittsburgh group. And the Conventional Lives is kind of like the couch potato types. Looking at this, we decided these 3 groups here were really the ones we wanted to focus on for growth, 355,000 households in the New York metro. We then asked people, this is something that you could do as well. We came up with 13 different statements or phrases about what a classical music concert might mean to people, the motivation for going, what you're looking for in a concert. So we asked people we gave people those 13 phrases, and then we asked them, so how does our organization, in this case New York Philharmonic, deliver against that? Each one of these you can think of as a hypothesis, potentially the platform for a campaign. And what you have here is the percent who said, yeah, that's what I want in the classical experience. What you have here is the percent who said, yeah, the New York Philharmonic delivers that. So glamour and romance, not so much. If you want that in New York, you're going to go somewhere else. Fresh, new, and exciting, unfortunately not so much. Peace, relaxation, and tranquility, if you want that, you don't live in Manhattan. And then sort of over here, 75% plus, you had a whole bunch of things. Absorbing and transporting experience, music that touches head, heart, and soul, entertaining evening out, richest and wonder of classical music, exquisite music, the best in classical music. These things here, people said, yeah, that's what I really want when I go out for a classical music concert. But what we saw looking at this was that these here, which are really about the music itself, the functional attribute, people absolutely believe the New York Philharmonic delivers. 75% plus said, yeah, you guys are a really good orchestra. But the problem was, only about half of them thought we delivered on the emotional benefit, touching head, heart, and soul, an absorbing and transporting experience, profoundly moving and inspiring, etc. So the brand strategy was, warm up. Let's dial the meaning of the New York Philharmonic brand to be less about functional attribute and more about the consumer end benefit, why it matters to you. Basically, people said, yeah, you're a really good orchestra, but so what? You don't matter to me. So that became like Dove Soap and like Nike. How do we imbue the brand with that additional kind of layer of meaning? We also looked at it by our segments, which was interesting. So the three groups that we were looking at all wanted that same kind of thing. If you wanted to go after the busy suburbs, you definitely would have talked about glamour and romance, relaxing escape. If you wanted to go after the conventional lives, it would have been all about entertainment. So understanding your segments and what their motivations are, what they're seeking is very important. Okay, so positioning statement, functional attribute, consumer and benefit. New York Philharmonic promises exquisite music perfectly performed for a profoundly moving concert experience that touches head, heart, and soul. You can see that's exactly from the research, right? Verbatim. So this is not a headline, by the way. This is not creative. This is a strategy. The question then is, how do you execute that? So we did a campaign look like this. Are these the only horns you've heard lately? Surround yourself with an entirely different set of notes. Redefine your evening rush. And when's the last time a conductor truly took you anywhere? Which became this. And frankly, it didn't work. We ran this campaign and did not see the bump in sales that we were expecting. And I think looking at it now, it seems like these were much more about that escape idea than the profoundly transporting and absorbing kind of thing. There's something about there's an energy about our version of absorbing and transporting that was kind of lost in this. This is more about escaping to another world. So we went back to the drawing board, and after more work, more focus groups, new ad agency, ended up with this. And when people saw this in the focus groups, they immediately said, oh yeah, that's it. That's an absorbing and transporting experience. That's music. That's your logo. There is the new logo. And it was sort of an immediate reaction. The thing is, when you find something that works, stick with it. We have this sort of notion that every year we have to have a new campaign. So not true. People will remember your last campaign if you're lucky at all. So what you want to do is reinforce it year after year if you find something that really resonates. So we did this for 3 seasons, varying a little bit every year. And the interesting thing is that that's our competition, Carnegie Hall. So they're now in the same place they used to be. But we now have established, there really is a differentiation, right? We look very different, and the differentiation is based on relevance. But they've stayed the same with just showing pictures of the artists. Now, measuring what we were trying to do, this is the study from 2002, and our strategy 2008. We did the work again, a significant increase in 2012, even more. And this is of people who are in that inclined non-attender group. So this is all based on perceptions of the Philharmonic brand. At the same time, we were seen as more powerful, engaging, energetic, exciting, warm and welcoming, went way up, friendly, etc. Carnegie Hall, again, in fact, this is Anne-Sophie Mutter was in the very first brochure I showed you from Carnegie in 2002. And so there's very, very strong difference between us now until they did this. This really pissed me off. Because this is Carnegie Hall now finally learning. It's about the experience. It's about the consumer end benefit. And that, that's what we're selling. That's the consumer end benefit. It's more about them than it is about us. And I think this was a real powerful, effective, and successful evolution in their marketing approach. So what happened to us was that over the 3 years of that campaign, very strong increase in the sign of kind of our footprint. Number of unique households coming increased by 2/3. So we really did penetrate into that other inclined non-attender group. Next example, Guthrie. Anybody here with a theater company? Okay, are you familiar with the Guthrie at all? Do I need to give you a little? Okay, you're laughing. Are you from Minneapolis or? No. Okay, all right. So. Similar situation, the Guthrie has a change in artistic director, but they're not seeing any growth in audience. And so how do we begin to get into that inclined non-attender group? This is the pie chart for theater in the Twin Cities, way, way different from classical music. So you see here that the opportunity in theater is much larger than it is in classical music, which is something that classical music needs to worry about. But anyway, a great opportunity for growth. This was the psychographic segmentation, same technique, mailed people a questionnaire. Those that qualified got a bigger one. And we had these 4 segments. And this is sort of becoming familiar to you now. Culturals, we've learned about before. Frantics, we know. Younger, family type. Homebodies and escapists were just talking about what they said. Escapists were into escapist theater, and homebodies were sort of like the couch potato types. So looking at them more, we really saw that these 2 groups here had the strongest propensity to attend, so decided to focus in on those. And in this case, we went into focus groups. The New York work was done all via quantitative. Now we are bringing people into a focus group facility and representatives of the cultural group and of the frantic group. And we tested 8 hypotheses with them. Getting back to you can't afford to waste money. So much better to test these ideas in a group rather than actually doing a campaign that's totally misguided. So, and these hypotheses all came from people in the building who felt, yeah, this is the way that we should brand the Guthrie Theater. So we, I think, honed our thinking by putting them in front of customers, which you can do too. First one was, go to the Guthrie because we're fun and entertaining. And people said, no, you're not. You're a really, really great Shakespearean repertory company, and it's too informal and really lacks soul and sounds desperate. Go to the Guthrie because we're the Twin Cities own. We're your theater. They sort of said, well, that's true, but it's not really getting me to go this week. Okay, go to the Guthrie because of the incredible heritage. Guthrie Theater founded in 1963 by Tyrone Guthrie. The first show was Hume Cronin and Jessica Tandy doing Hamlet. Air conditioning broke. Everybody in the Twin Cities was there. They all told me that. We were all there that night. And they said, well, interesting for PR, but really, what have you done lately for me is what it's much more about. Go to the Guthrie and learn about theater. This is one that I thought was pretty powerful. You're going to experience these great works of art. You're going to learn about them. And they said that, gee, it sounds too mumsy, too English lit-like, chore-like. Sounds like work. So then we tried 4 more. Go to the Guthrie because we're a really good theater. Esteem, right? And they said, well, yeah, but again, not really motivating. Elegant evening out. We showed pictures of women in gowns and pearls and all that. And they said, wait a minute, this is Minnesota. This is hot dish. It's not about elegance. So move on. Show me something else. Theater of the people. Another one I was a real fan of. The accessibility thing. Open our arms. And we had on the theater door, we had open arms if we'd be friends from Midsummer Night's Dream. Really talked about the accessibility of theater. And they said, well, yeah, that's true, it's appropriate, but it's not really that motivating to me about going tonight. Okay, Guthrie as an inspirational escape. And this was the one that really, when you showed people in the focus group, they really responded. They said, yes, absolutely, it's totally an escape. Cultural said, yes, it's an escape into the event, into the evening. It's about growing, becoming one with the production. Frantic said, yes, it's about getting away from it all, special evening out, dinners and drinks. It's about the whole experience. So they thought about it in different ways, but they completed it the same way, which is about it's an escape. And this is how they talked about it. A Frantic did say, It's just how to escape reality for an evening. A great way to unplug, forget about the humdrum and business and kids. It's a special night. Forget the world and color your world. It's fairy tales for adults. I love that. And a cultural actually said this, I saw it. It's not only an escape, but also a planned, purposeful exploration of other cultures and places. But for both of them, it was about escape. So here's the positioning statement. There is our functional attribute. Guthrie offers high-quality theater, invites his audience to escape the everyday by stimulating their emotions. How do we execute that? This is the brochure before. You know, again, kind of like the Carnegie Hall. There's the actors, there's the building, there's the old logo. Afterwards, it became this. 365 days a year, you live in a world of rush hour traffic and junk mail, self-service gas, fast food, voice messaging, convenience stores, artificial sweeteners, bag-it-yourself groceries, and disposable styrofoam coffee cups. Set aside a few evenings for magic. That eventually was shortened to this: all work, no plays. Set aside a few evenings for magic. And, following the spell of the Guthrie, amazing growth, and 80% increase in subscribers over 3 years, ticket revenue, blah, blah, sold millions of tickets. So the fourth example I'm going to show you now is the current one at H&H. And this is, again, market study. It was done pro bono, and it really has affected us in terms of everything else, 360 degrees. Relevant strategy is what we're trying to implement now as a result of this work. Any questions about those other three before I move on? I feel like I'm bludgeoning you. All right, so that's the Hannah Haydn Society at Symphony Hall in Boston. We are a 204-year-old orchestra and chorus performing 200 to 400-year-old music using historically informed performance practices and period instruments. So everything I just said says we're old, right? It's all about being old, which is true. H&H is the oldest performing arts organization in the country. The Marine Band disputes that because they were founded in 1775, but it depends whether you think the Marines are a performing arts organization or not. We're 1815, so anyway, the question was, how do you make H&H relevant to today, to people? Everything we talked about earlier. What's our relevance proposition? This was a market study. We talked to 800 of our audience members, 800 Boston area people who qualified, as I mentioned before. We included these folks because H&H had no audience information whatsoever. So we wanted to know more about our current attenders. We wanted to know the size of the market. We wanted to know what people thought of us, brand perceptions. And I wanted to really know about this historically informed performance thing. This is kind of a movement in classical music that started back in the 70s about performing the music of Bach and Vivaldi, et cetera, using the practices of the time, which are very different from what they are now. And the idea is that you can bring the music more alive, recreate it as it sounded when it was fresh and new in a more exciting way, using these historically informed practices. The strings you use, the vibrato, your approach to the performance, everything else. So how important actually is that to the audience, and how important is this period instrument thing? They were playing on old instruments of the time. Coming into H&H from the outside, I kind of thought, this feels like inside baseball to me. This is really for the aficionado. They're going to care about this. So how important is that? I wanted to find out, so I asked the customers, what else do people go to? How should we position ourselves? How should we program H&H? And how should we communicate? And there's the pie chart again. We know by now. Classical music has a problem. In this case, we had about 8% of the Boston market qualified. We did segment this into two groups because H&H is a specialty organization. A lot of people who are into classical music aren't into the kind of music that we play. You're not going to hear us do Tchaikovsky, 1812 Overture, or Gershwin, or anything like that. We really are specializing in the Baroque and classical period. So by that definition, the target audience is more like this group here than this large group here. So very, very important to know. We talked about awareness, and we found out that H&H had a big awareness problem. The big organizations in Boston, not surprising, the big one overall is the Boston Symphony. 43% awareness among the market sample versus 6% for H&H, and very little for these small organizations down here. This was useful to us for a number of different reasons. First of all, it's good to know that you have an issue with awareness, because that is a different marketing strategy than you might otherwise employ. Our main competition is not these people down here, which were other small early music organizations in Boston. That was the theory going in. Our competition is Emmanuel Music, Blue Heron, Far Cry, Lorelei, the Boston Early Music Festival, Boston Baroque. And the answer is no, that's not really, Willie Horton, was it? Whitey Rob Banks, that's where the money is. The problem is not down, the opportunity is not to steal share down here, the opportunity is up here. So why do people choose the BSO instead of us? Can we do something to peel off just a little bit of that audience, to add us into their entertainment experience? So who are they, and how can we appeal to them? So this group here really is not where we should be focusing. This was about the market sample, same similar kind of thing. H&H is here. Boston Baroque, which we thought was our main competition, was actually way down here. Boston Symphony, MFA, at the top. That's where we should focus ourselves. Looking at what people thought about us, we start off, this is another great reason to talk to your audience because you get great quotes from them. Just ask people, what top of mind impressions, when you think about your organization, what top of mind impressions do you have as you think about the experience? So this is H&H patrons. Your performance brings tears to my eyes. This is one of the best orchestras on earth. Performances are characterized by individuation. That is, one can clearly hear each member's contribution to the work as a whole. I find this miraculous. Maybe the best chorus anywhere, the most passionate concert mistress, the best conductor, the hell of an accomplished orchestra. Absolutely superb performances. They inject such life into old music. So now we're on a mission to find relevance, right? So we're starting to get now, I think, a little bit of an insight into how we are relevant to people. Then we asked the market sample, the people who aren't going, what they thought about us. And they said, well, they play early music. They've been around a long time, well regarded. They're a true staple of the Boston music scene. I don't know, it seems very old Boston, which is a good thing, but not something I'm interested in very often. But mainly they said, I don't know enough about it to have an impression. So very, very different perceptions about us from the market than from our current attenders. An opportunity again. H&H patrons thought that we were talented, professional, intelligent, passionate, engaging. The market in general thought we were more formal, less passionate, and less engaging than our customers did. So a brand perception that we need to worry about changing. Thinking about the concert experience, again, we asked folks, what are the most enjoyable aspects of going? The performers enjoy their work. You can hear the love and passion they have in every note. I'd put the singing of the chorus in the realm of celestial, indescribable. The repertoire sounds fresh and buzzing with energy. Okay, not old, but fresh and buzzing with energy. Concerts are dynamic, living experiences. It makes it possible if you're here with ancient ears. The intimacy of the performance, you're able to see into the music. Their performances offer the perfect triad of classical music, the performers, the composer, and the audience. Every aspect of the music is so exquisitely perfect and beautiful. The musicians in the chorus transcend magnificence. I've never heard a complaint on leaving the concerts, just head-shaking awe. So that's relevance. So now we're onto something here. The concerts are moving, emotionally moving, uplifting, inspiring, passionate, joyous, and again, giving people a list of adjectives. These are the ones that all rose to the top for subscribers and single ticket buyers, and the quotes, again, are amazing. I'm often reduced to tears. I don't cry easily. I go for the historically informed, period authentic experience in an artistic, emotional way. That's H&H in a nutshell. Attending H performance is always a delight and an inspiration. So this is now we're getting to relevance. This issue about programming came up. We are a Baroque and classical period orchestra. What should we play? If we're going to go after that other group in town, the BSO, how should we program? So we asked people their enjoyment of these various periods of classical music, and then we looked at them based on subscribers, single ticket buyers, and inclined non-attenders. Interesting thing to me was that up here, you saw our current audience all really liked the Baroque and the classical period a lot. But looking at the inclined non-attender, these people are inclined, their Baroque interest is far less than it is in the classical period and early Romantic. So this is Bach, Vivaldi, Telemann, Monteverdi, etc. This is Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, getting into Schumann, Mendelssohn, Schubert, excuse me. So this told us that if we wanted to appeal to an inclined non-attender group, which goes to the BSO a lot, maybe we should just dial our programming just a little bit. And we do 9 concerts a year, so maybe 4 of them are Baroque and 5 are classical. Maybe we make 1 or more of those classical. Maybe we should do Beethoven's Ninth. I haven't done it in a long time. Maybe we should do Mozart Requiem. I haven't done that in a long time. So if you want to attract that inclined non-attender, programming is part of the strategy. So then the question about HIP and period instruments. I'm just going to look at this over here. This is a chart that shows the percent that people were aware we focused on Baroque and classical music. 32% of the inclined non-attenders were. 21% were aware that we performed with period instruments. 61% of the inclined non-attenders weren't aware of either of those things about H&H. So a big awareness problem. But when we asked them, if you knew that about us, would it change your interest? The inclined non-attender, 74% of them said, yes, knowing you focus on Baroque and classical instruments does increase my interest. 82% said, yes, knowing you perform with period instruments does increase my interest. Of course, we defined this for them so they knew what it was. So now we have an answer. Actually, this HIP period instrument thing is not just inside baseball. It actually is a point of difference, and it really matters to these people. They think it's kind of cool. So let's work on that. We checked on various add-ons to the programs. We found that period instrument demonstrations were attractive to people. On-site dining was not. That was very good to know because that costs nothing and that costs a lot. We asked about media usage by generation. Obviously, you can see that for millennials, very, very different media usage than for boomers. And I think our takeaway from this was that given our audience, it's not an either-or thing, but it's an and thing. You have to be in both types of media, social, digital, as well as traditional. And particularly public radio came up for us in a way that we weren't using before. So we now know the market's 40,000 households in Boston. We know that they think well of us, but there's very, very low awareness and have to build that. We know that there actually is interest in HIP and period instruments. Competition is primarily the BSO. We're going to dial our programming towards classical period, more digital and NPR to appeal more to that, what we learned in the research. And in terms of positioning, we found there were these 3 kind of pillars that we wanted to focus on in our communications. Historically informed, which is about historically informed. Masterfully performed, which is about the quality of the music. And then passionately shared. We thought this was very important because it's something we heard over and over again, which is about this connection between the audience and the performers that we believe is kind of unique. So all that together leads to immensely engaging, emotionally moving, and joyfully uplifting performances. The brand positioning, the functional attribute, H&H has a passionate devotion to historically informed performances executed at the highest levels for immensely moving and uplifting experiences. That's the consumer end benefits. So that's the strategy. This is the before. Again, I always love the empty seats on the cover of the brochure. It became this. This is the first year while the work was still in progress, really talking about joy and intimacy. And then it became this. Oh, this is the inside, showing the experience. An extraordinary orchestra, a breathtaking chorus. Oh, I thought that was kind of funny, a breathtaking chorus. Now we have a panel talking about the period instruments. This is the brochure the second year. Naturally performed, passionately shared, now taken literally from the positioning statement and the research. And that was the brochure this year. Again, we're communicating the experience. We still have the period instrument thing, how a three-year-old instrument can make music sound brand new. We now are doing the instrument demonstrations in the lobby. This is our principal oboe. And we did these videos. We had several musicians wanted to talk about their instruments and why they matter to them. And we use these as this is kind of a sizzle reel of 5 short videos we have on our website. See what you think.
My instrument was made in 1704 in Rome. Its character and its sound speak to me, and I feel like I hear my voice when I perform.
When I'm immersed in this world playing with Handel and Haydn on my period violin, it's like uncovering this whole world, and you feel like you're getting closer to the sounds that they heard back then. And for me, that just unlocks a whole area of creativity.
The instrument that I'm playing is an exact copy of the bass that Haydn had in his court orchestra at Esterhazy, or the Esterhazy Palace in Eisenstadt.
Merlin was a Belgian inventor who had interests in many different things and is credited with being the inventor of roller skates. He made my instrument in 1784. I started to play on it, and it felt like it was my soulmate.
My violin is a Joseph Klotz. It was made in 1772, and apparently Mozart himself had a Klotz.
I remember the moment I played it for the first time. I remember I felt very strongly, I don't think I will ever be better than this violin. This violin will always have something to teach me. There's no break between myself and the instrument, and that makes me feel like I have wings on stage.
When we play music together, it's like there's a part of that person that you only ever see in that environment. It's that very personal communication with the musicians that come together and make something that's very special. With Handel Haydn, things like that really do happen all the time.
So that's trying to communicate the positioning we came up with. We also extended this to our institutional marketing plan. We took the plan that we learned by taking the same class you have, and then we decided to look at each of the components of that plan and score them based on our brand strategy. So to what extent does this activity communicate the masterly performed message? To what extent does it communicate the historically informed message? To what extent does it communicate the passionate sharing message? And then I added another one, which was about emotional movement. So to what extent does this thing we're doing position H&H as a forward-moving place with momentum? And so now we've integrated the strategy into the institutional marketing. What happened with all of this was that this was the sales the year before, first year of the campaign, and second year of the campaign this year. Very nice growth. Single ticket sales, slumped a little bit, but then this year up quite nicely. In terms of total attendance, from 24,000 to 35,000. This all affects donations. So that's the first year of the campaign, second year of the campaign. So revenue growing very, very, very nicely. Questions about that before I move on? Yes?
Surveys, the various surveys that you did for various organizations, are those words you actually were asking to get from the people who were surveyed, or were they words you supplied? Well,
We gave people a list of adjectives. And we said, to what extent do you believe this describes? How strongly do you believe that this speaks to the H&H experience? So this was giving people a list of adjectives, which are all words that we could have used, and that's then what really rises to the top. Yeah.
Attendees?
Yes. Yeah. Anyone else? Okay. So I want to talk about how this technique of listening to the audience can apply to fundraising, and then I'm going to close with a very short example of using your own customers to define and communicate relevance as it means to them. So this is a very brief look at a project called the Patron Growth Initiative. This was a project done by 10 major orchestras over a 10-year period. We all got together and we said we want to learn how to increase lifetime value. Lifetime value is the revenue, total revenue, ticket sales, donations, merchandise, special events that comes from every household. And this is about how do we improve lifetime value from our own current customers. So this is not about going after new audiences. This is about the audiences we already have. How do we deepen the relationship? And the methodology was every single transaction that took place over 10 years for these 10 orchestras went into this project. So millions of transactions, tens of millions of data points, and then survey research of people afterwards to sort of delve into why they did what they did. A couple of major headline takeaways. The first one was, it's very simple, to increase giving, work on increasing frequency of attendance. So the number one thing is if you want to get your current single ticket buyers and low frequency attenders to eventually grow into donors, job number one is get them to come back to more events. That's the only thing, just focus on that. That's your entire strategy. And once they become regular attenders, then they're more likely to become donors. This chart here shows that. Basically, this compares tenure, how many years you've been going, with how frequently you go. And so, and this is the percentages are the percent that donate. And you can see that at each level of tenure, the percent that donate goes up this way more than goes this way. So you can sort of supercharge and increase the propensity to give by working on increasing frequency. So that's the first item. I know I went quickly on that. Any questions about that? So just get your low frequency people to come more often and they'll grow into donors. Second thing was relevance. Make your communications to donors about what matters to them. So this question said, when you think about giving to the orchestra, is it about supporting the orchestra or is it about, well, here we go. People donate for many reasons. For you, is it about obtaining tangible benefits or supporting the orchestra? 75% say it's about supporting the orchestra. Very few say it's about the benefits. So in your messaging, it should be about how the institution matters to them and what it does for them as opposed to get the coffee mug or the other, transactional benefit. That's the second thing. Reasons for donating. An important community asset. They love classical music and want to support it. To ensure their future, et cetera, for specific benefits way down here. The really powerful part of this is about relationships. I know Brett talked about this, and let me show you how we looked at it in this study. We asked 7,787 people to tell us, think about you and this orchestra in terms of being in a relationship as if the orchestra was another person. Please describe the type of relationship you have and explain a bit about why you think that. So 7,787 people actually answered that question. The researcher read all of them and put them into these four categories. Partnerships, which are extremely close, compartmentalized partnerships, a little more distance, acquaintanceships, and the negative and disjointed, which I'll show you examples of. So for instance, these are what people who are in partnerships said, characterized by deep closeness, intimacy, a sense of rewarding and mutual connection. It's like my beloved wife, the orchestra. I think of the orchestra as a parent. It is nurturing, soothing, comforting, challenging, educational, wise, and welcoming. A cherished friend, warm, constant, clever, and talented. No explanation required. She's just there. Inextricably bound to one another, one of my most significant relationships, the orchestra. Then compartmentalize, a little more distance, as you'll see. This orchestra is Cincinnati's pride and joy. It's wonderful to know it's one of the best in the nation. Someone I admire and respect from a distance with limited personal interaction, similar to an elected official that I respect and have heard speak. Excellent teacher and willing student. See some more of that distance there. There's still respect. Then acquaintanceships, even more distance. Like a distant cousin I see very rarely. I have fun when I see them. I don't feel any need to make a special effort to see them more often. When it happens, it happens. Someone who looks familiar. I might even know their name, but we don't talk. I like to hook up occasionally, not have a special, steady relationship. Business, that's it. You put on concerts I like, I will go. As you can see, more distance now. And then you have these really, really broken relationships. Spoiled, self-absorbed, out of touch. Love, hate. For 4 years, we asked to change our seats to the aisle and never received a response. A relationship implies reciprocity. The orchestra, though, treats me as though I were an anonymous one among thousands of others, not flattering and not very friendly. Reminiscent of my first wife, beautiful but haughty. Does as she pleases with no regard for my opinion and freely spends my money without asking. So this is a divorce, right? Reminiscent of my first wife, this person's gone. Dysfunctional, which is about the orchestra and nothing beyond that. So the key thing here is that there actually was a strong relationship between people's feelings about the organization and their propensity to give. People who are at the high end of the connection scale donated much more than people who are in acquaintanceships. So that matters. So I want to finish with this one example that you can do yourselves, which is to ask your own customers to define for you how you're relevant, what the brand means to them. This is the New York Philharmonic Concerts in the Parks. I was looking at Flickr one day and I noticed that there were thousands of people who were posting pictures of the New York Philharmonic without my knowledge, which was really great. So I thought, why don't we, catalyze this and ask people to put up their own photos of the concerts in the parks in Central Park and have them tell us what it means to them. This is a photo that we used before the work was done, typical concert photo. There's the conductor there, and somewhere in the back is the audience. But when we turn it around and put the camera in the hands of the audience and tell them, what does this experience mean to you, it becomes very, very different. Yes, it's still about music, but there was something that we were completely missing in our communications. There's a whole nother reason to go to these concerts in the parks, and something else that the New York Philharmonic did for them that we were totally oblivious to. It's about losing yourself in the day. It's about fireworks, definitely about fireworks, but it's about community. It's about getting together with your fellow New Yorkers on a beautiful night in Central Park. It's about connection. It's about romance. It's about food. It's definitely about food. It's about a glass of wine. It's about creativity. But mainly it's about connecting. It's about getting together with people. This is what the New York Philharmonic did for people. This is what we meant to people. This is why they came. We were completely oblivious to that, but we only learned it because we asked the audience to tell us. So that's the end. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. We have time for a few questions, Matthew? Yep. Oh, come on. Brett's here. He's going to be disappointed if you don't have a question. You have a question.
It's been a year since I've seen this presentation. There's a lot of new material in it, but I'm struck by most of the examples seem to be kind of movement toward humanizing the band or
Yes.
humanizing the theater.
Yes.
Is there something to that? I mean, is there something that we can take away from each of these examples that says maybe we're a bit too austere and cold and distant and we need to warm up a little bit? Is there something core to that?
Yeah, I think it's a very good observation. You can extend that to those for-profit examples too, about warming up the emotional, personal. It's about emotions, and it's about personal connection, but also defining that as specifically as you can, because as we saw at the Guthrie and in the New York Philharmonic, you have a number of options that you can employ. You just can't say, hey, we really mean a lot. You have to go further and dig further and really understanding precisely how you are relevant to people and how you're different. But yeah, exactly. Thanks for pointing that out. Yes, ma'am. Microphone. I'm getting better at this as we do these.
So I'm mindful of what you said about demographics, and
Yeah.
that you didn't want to focus too much on that.
Right.
But the people that love you. On the other hand, when we are looking strategically, our organization, and I imagine many, tend to draw an older population, and you want to look for ways to bring in a younger demographic to sustain your organization,
Mhm.
to keep it thriving. So
Mhm.
how do we reconcile those?
Well, I would say that, of course, that's true of H&H as well. And all these examples, they want a younger audience. But you're not marketing to all younger people. You're not marketing to all millennials. What are there, 90 million of them or something? What you're going after is the people in the younger generations who like what you do and aren't going. So my first, question is, what are they about? What media do they use? What do they want from us? We did include them in this study, younger audiences in that inclined non-attender group. That inclined non-attender group is substantially younger than our current audience is. So what about them? And what we learned was that their awareness is low, their perceptions are that we're stuffy, what they want from the experience is the same thing. They're really into the period instrument thing. The authenticity really mattered to them. And we need to use different channels to communicate with them, primarily social and not the ones we were using. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that's our main sort of way of thinking and area of focus is not about the demographics, it's about the relationship to the art. And then within that, you have people younger, older that you want to have come. Yeah, did that help? Okay.
So I'm not sure if I can articulate this quite correctly, but it seems to me like from what all that we've talked about and seen, that there's some intersection here with branding and like rebranding and marketing. And just having like read through the cycle book that we got at the last seminar, it mentioned like, well, don't spend a lot of money in branding. Like that's not really like your best use of dollar. However, it seemed to be very important for some of these organizations to really focus on the branding and the logo and like integrating that into their marketing strategy. So I guess what I'm getting at is like, is it valuable? Like if you identify that perhaps the branding of how you're going about it and your like kind of taglines and keywords, and is it worth it like spending some money or having that as part of your 5-year plan?
Yeah, I haven't read this cycle in a while, to be honest, but my recollection is that it's talking about sort of general like posters, billboards, that kind of branding to the world about you. And what I'm talking about is creating a definition of your organization that makes a connection and enhances it's institutional marketing, enhances the interest in your individual events. So when I read that, I think that's what I interpreted to mean, was that it's not about broad, generic, hey, we're great, but it's about when you are communicating to your specific target audience, your inclined non-attender, and your current audience as well, having a specific proposition about why you matter that you know is going to connect with them, that's going to make them pay attention to you, and that you also use this philosophy of listening to the customer to help inform what you're going to be selling to them. Do you want?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, we just say, we've seen a number of smaller organizations, 500,000, 750,000 a year, fret so much about the font in the logo, or spend months and months and months thinking, is this name the right name? And and are the colors right? And printing and reprinting, stationery, and obsessing over that stuff. And the point I think the cycle is trying to make is, there may be a New York Phil that decides that it needs a wavy thing after lots of research, and that would be, there's probably a big investment for the New York Phil to rebrand in that way, having gone through all of that research. For us, for the most part, that stuff, the return on that is probably just not going to be as quick and as high as doing some of the quicker, cheaper things that David was talking about, or building a change narrative like we were talking about this morning. And so that's kind of where we're coming from, because we see people spend a lot of time and money on colors and logos and stationery, when that really typically doesn't motivate the next big gift.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. I would just say that we did not spend any money on a branding campaign at the Philharmonic. We just took what we were currently doing and changed how we can communicate it, but we didn't spend money on posters or billboards or anything else. It was simply just changing the look and feel of the current communications.
You like didn't hire a consultant and do all of that fancy thing about the logo?
We did hire a researcher, which in that example it was about $100,000, but these other ones I gave you were all pro bono, so it doesn't cost that much. I mean, I've seen examples of $30,000, $20,000 research that's extremely useful and effective. And then it was working with an advertising agency to do the creative, which we were already doing. So it was just giving them firmer direction. Do you have time for another question or two? Yeah. One more. There was another question here. Yes, sir.
So as I absorb all of this and think about talking to the people who are coming in the door and the people not coming in the door about what they really care about, so that we start speaking to that instead of things that we make up in our head. We're a smaller arts organization, our budget is more limited, and so I can start to imagine how we would open up those conversations with the people who are walking in the door. Can you talk a little bit more about how to reach those inclined non-attenders if we don't have $100,000 to drop on a researcher?
Right. Don't focus on the $100,000, please. That was at the high end. As I said, the other ones were pro bono. What I would do is first of all, you got to really, really work with people who are passionate about what you do. It's not about finding a consultant, on Google and paying them a lot of money. I think I would start with trying to make a connection with somebody in the community, in my audience, who has some sort of expertise in this area or has connections to expertise. So board members who have access to ad agencies or research firms, colleges and universities, working with a marketing professor or a stat professor on a project to help you with this. I think also fundamentally just at developing the culture of learning from your audience. And as I said before, you could just do an email and just create your own create your own panel. And through those people, you can find other people who aren't coming and talk to them. It can be done very inexpensively and, street level that way. Yeah, but I also think you can, these things are fungible. You can get grants for these. Erie Philharmonic just did a donation in their board. Everyone put in $2,500 across the 40 board members, and they funded it that way. So that can be done. Are we out of time? Okay, well, I really appreciate your time today. Enjoyed speaking with you. Thank you.